Hi everyone. Today for day 22 in the 3D Speaking Challenge, we have like a challenging topic, and it's coming from a lot of recent news that's been developing about statues and whether what should we do with them, especially when they become problematic and are honoring uh, people who are perhaps on the wrong side of history. So I've recently read a few things about, for example, there's a statue of Theodore Roosevelt called the Equestrian statue and located in New York City. And I saw that there's been a decision to have that removed as of yesterday. I've also seen in Southern California, where I grew up, that a statue of Padre Serra will be removed, and with his role in the founding of the missions, the Spanish missions throughout California. I currently live in Querétaro, Mexico, and that is where Padre Serra came from. And so there is, as this being his hometown, there are some references to him, and so it will be interesting to have conversations, if possible, with people from Querétaro to see what would be their opinion about his legacy and his role in the founding of the missions, and there are claims that the local populations were used as slave labor to create the missions. So the legacy of slavery and slave owners and Confederate generals has become a theme that is under the microscope at the moment, as we don't exactly, we're not erasing history, but we are being aware of who we honor in society through statues, naming places after people, street names, park names, building names. It reflects the society's values, and it's something that I didn't quite take note of until I moved to France. And as I navigated the city and street names, for example, I started to get an idea of which people were honored with street names, and I realized that there were no street names for Napoleon or for Bonaparte. There was the Hôtel des Invalides, which had housed his tomb. Later on, when I worked at La Défense, I found that his ashes were scattered along the Seine at a certain point in front of the office where I worked. So the legacy of who has a statue or a street name or a place name, it can be polemical. Whose history do we acknowledge? Whose history do we ignore? And I hope that going forward, there will be new statues that can respect and honor women, people of color, and perhaps also value actions of just like daily life or other values that might be more abstract and not one particular person. So that I do know, reading through some history as well, that in some states in the South that some statues were put up during difficult times of segregation and civil rights movements, where there was a message being made by putting up statues of Confederate heroes or slave owners. Now the question of where do we draw the line? This is now being debated about, for example, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. Do we consider them good presidents, founding fathers, or do we strike down their legacy because they owned slaves? And it is a difficult question, and also to realize the founding of the United States did have issues with human rights, with equality, and that it was already divided from the very beginning, and that it eventually played out into the Civil War about 80 years later. So there was a troubled past since the very beginning of the country, and the presidents and statesmen that were wealthy landowners were people who also grappled with these questions of, is this right, is this wrong? And so I don't know what should we say about, do we erase, do we expunge all of these people's names? Where are these limits? And I think there is communication, there's dialogue that needs to happen around society. Many people do take part in toppling these statues and destroying them. Perhaps before that happens, some of these statues could be, or these landmarks could be, moved to a museum where there's a potential for a debate or discussion or context given to these statues. They may still be considered works of art, maybe not just in a public space, because of the values they portray, the messages that are understood by people who come into contact with those images. And as I was watching in one TED Talk about art amending kind of history, being surrounded by these reminders can have a profound effect on the way people perceive their role in society and how they're treated, or how other people think of them, and that's unfortunate when that can lead to oppression or a systemic racism in some cases. So I think removing problematic statues is it is something to consider at this time. And what dialogue are we having about racism and segregation and the history of that, and history of slavery, and the United States does have a troubled past, and if we cannot come to terms with that past, we do have a troubled history that will continue into the future. So it is very important that we have these dialogues, that we don't neglect this another generation, that we don't just kind of wait for a new news cycle to replace what's going on. I think there is meaningful conversations taking place at the moment. Hola a todos, hoy es el día 22 del desafío en junio. Estamos hablando de un tema bastante difícil en muchos idiomas, de los idiomas nativos y también que estamos estudiando, y qué hacemos con estatuas y monumentos que honoran personas de la historia que sabemos que tal vez no tienen un buen legato, y si conocemos mejor la historia, esa gente no es para honrar. Un ejemplo que puedo pensar es Cristóbal Colón y el masacre de los nativos y en las islas y donde llegó y también veo en los Estados Unidos con estatuas de generales de la Confederación, y ahora hay estatuas de los presidentes que tenían esclavas, y qué hacemos con esas estatuas, y los quitamos, los eliminamos o los guardamos, los ponemos en un museo para poder dialogar y comunicar y dar un contexto a esas estatuas, y un mejor conocimiento de la historia y los problemas potenciales. Y no es fácil, y no es fácil saber la línea o la límite donde decidimos ya basta, o todavía hay otras cosas que debemos eliminar o mover o quitar de la vista pública. Y no sé, no es fácil, pero yo creo que vale la pena pensar, reflexionar sobre estos temas de vez en cuando. Ahorita es un momento histórico, creo. Bonjour tout le monde. Aujourd'hui, c'est le 22e jour du défi en juin, et on a un thème un peu difficile sur les statuts et qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec les statuts quand ça devient problématique. Par exemple, les généraux des États de sécession, ou d'autres présidents qui ont eu des esclaves. Je sais qu'en Californie, maintenant, ils vont enlever une statue pour Padre Serra, et avec ses actions avec les missions espagnoles qui existent en Californie. Et donc, il y a des dialogues possibles maintenant. Dans certains moments, c'est des dialogues assez violents avec des émeutes, mais il y a aussi des décisions qui sont prises par les municipalités pour savoir qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec ces statues et où est-ce qu'on les met, dans un musée ou autre part. Et, euh, et c'est pas facile, mais je crois que c'est important en ce moment de réfléchir et qu'est-ce qu'on veut pour euh, les espaces publics euh, dans l'avenir et au présent. Hallo an alle, heute ist der 22. Tag in den Herausforderungen des Juni und wir sprechen ein bisschen über Kunst und ähm, wie sagt man das, Statuen und was machen wir mit diesen Statuen? Dürfen wir sie ähm, behalten oder entfernen die Statuen und zum Beispiel wenn die Gesichter ist schwerer und wir wissen, dass zum Beispiel ein Präsident hätte Sklaven, dürfen wir diesen Statuen Statue entfernen oder können wir können wir es legen in einen Museum und für die Gesichter studieren und verstehen besser. Und es ist eine Frage schwer. Das ist schwer auf Englisch für mich und jetzt das ist sehr schwer auf Deutsch. Ich habe nicht so viel Vokabeln für dieses Thema, aber ich möchte sprechen oder überdenken und was können wir lernen mit diesem Moment in die Gesichter. Ciao a tutti, oggi è il giorno 22 e nella sfida in giugno e parliamo un po' di statue e devono mantenere le statue o rimuovere le statue. E questo è difficile per la storia e sappiamo sappiamo che per esempio alcuni presidenti avevano schiavi e per questo ora dovremo rimuovere queste statue per non continuare questa storia e e avere più di spazio per nuove statue per altre gente. Non so molto per questa tema in italiano, però ho detto un по. Всем привет! Сегодня был 22-й день из челленджа в июне, и мы поговорим немного о о статуях, и если мы должны держать или убирать статуи, потому что история трудная, и мы знаем, что, например, несколько президентов использовали рабы, и поэтому мы должны убирать эти статуи и положить эти статуи в музей, чтобы объяснить лучше историю и понимать историю. Так, это немного трудно сегодня, но большое спасибо.